The Chicago wind didn't just blow that night. It hunted. It was a jagged -20 degrees predator that turned breath into ice and hope into a memory. In the industrial district, the snow fell like shards of broken glass, proving that the city had no mercy for those left out in the dark. The silence of the desolate lot was shattered by the guttural roar of a BMW engine. Julian Sterling, a man whose pedigree was as polished as his silver tongue was venomous, shoved Sophia Moretti into the biting slush. He didn't see a girl. He saw a rejection he couldn't stomach. As he sped away, leaving the daughter of the city's most dangerous man to become a frozen statue, the stakes were set. Death was minutes away. Then she appeared. Elena Vance emerged from the whiteout like a specter of poverty. She had nothing, no money for her sister Maya's heart surgery, no food in her belly, and only one shield against the world, a tattered navy coat that still smelled faintly of her mother's lavender perfume. Seeing Sophia's blue-tinged skin, Elena didn't calculate the cost. She stripped off her only warmth, draping the heavy wool over the girl. "Live," Elena whispered, her own body immediately seizing under the wind's assault. As she turned to walk the 5 miles back to her basement, barefoot, her shoes left behind in the struggle to wrap Sophia, she left behind a trail of blood in the snow. She didn't know she had just saved the daughter of Dante Moretti or that her blood was now a map leading a king straight to her door. Thank you for sticking around with me, and welcome back, my wonderful story family. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. The January wind in Chicago didn't just bite, it devoured. Elena Vasquez felt it slice through her threadbare coat as she trudged down the alley behind St. Mary's Hospital, her breath crystallizing into small ghosts that vanished before they could haunt her. She had just finished her 3rd shift of the day, morning at the hospital cafeteria, afternoon at the dry cleaners, and now the graveyard slot cleaning offices in the financial district. Her body was a machine running on fumes, held together by coffee and desperation. Maya needed another round of treatments. The numbers on the hospital bill had grown so large they'd stopped looking like money and started looking like death sentences. She was cutting through the narrow passage between Wabash and State when she heard it, a sound so small it could have been the wind, or a cat, or nothing at all. But something in Elena's chest tightened, some maternal instinct that had been sharpened by 18 months of watching her sister fight cancer at 22 years old. The sound came again. A whimper. Elena stopped walking. The temperature had plummeted to -15 with wind chill, cold enough to kill in minutes. She should keep moving. She should get to the train before her fingers go completely numb. She followed the sound instead. Behind a dumpster, wedged into a corner where the brick walls offered minimal shelter from the screaming wind, sat a child. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, with dark curls plastered to her tear-streaked face and eyes that held the kind of terror Elena recognized. The terror of someone who had been forgotten. Oh my God! Elena dropped to her knees, the frozen concrete sending ice picks through her joints. "Sweetheart, are you okay? Where are your parents?" The girl was shaking so violently her teeth chattered like castanets. She wore a beautiful cashmere coat, expensive, Elena noted distantly, but it was designed for fashion, not survival. Her tiny hands were uncovered, already showing the waxy pallor of early frostbite. "Cold," the girl whispered. "So cold. Want Papa." Elena didn't hesitate. She stripped off her coat, the same coat she'd owned for 6 years, the one she'd mended so many times it was more thread than fabric, and wrapped it around the child. The wind immediately attacked her exposed body like a living thing, finding every gap in her sweater, every thin spot in her clothes. "What's your name, baby?" Sophia." "Sophia, that's beautiful. I'm Elena. I'm going to get you somewhere warm, okay?" She gathered the child into her arms, feeling how light she was, how fragile. Sophia burrowed against her chest, seeking warmth that Elena was rapidly losing. Elena tried to run, but the cold was already winning. Her muscles were seizing, her lungs burning with each breath of frozen air. The train station was 8 blocks away. The hospital was 12. She could feel her body shutting down, system by system, like a building losing power floor by floor. "Stay with me, Sophia," she gasped, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to the child or herself. She made it 4 blocks before her legs gave out. Elena collapsed against the side of a brownstone, clutching Sophia to her chest even as darkness crept into the edges of her vision. She could feel the cold settling into her bones now, not painful anymore but peaceful, almost warm. That was bad. She knew that was bad. With the last of her strength, she curled her body around Sophia, creating a shelter of flesh and sacrifice. Her final conscious thought was not of herself, not of the bills she wouldn't pay for the sister she was leaving behind. Her final thought was a prayer that someone would find this little girl before the winter took her too. The snow began to fall, covering them both in a shroud of white. Dante Moretti had killed 17 men in his 42 years of life. He had built an empire on blood and silence, had watched enemies beg for mercy he didn't possess, and had earned every syllable of the name they whispered in the dark corners of Chicago. The monster. None of that had prepared him for the moment his daughter went missing. Find her. His voice was quiet, which was worse than screaming. Everyone in the room knew that. Find her now, or I will burn this city to ash and salt the earth where it stood. His men scattered like roaches in light. Sophia had been taken from the car, an oversight that would cost someone their life. During the 17 minutes his driver had been incapacitated by a woman who had since been identified as working for Senator Harold Sterling. A political power play. A message. They had used his daughter as a pawn in their pathetic games. Dante stood at the window of his study, watching the snow fall, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Fear. Pure, primal, paralyzing fear. The call came at 11:47 p.m. "Boss." It was Marco, his most trusted lieutenant. "We found her. She's alive." The breath left Dante's lungs in a rush. "Where?" "West Side. Someone found her and kept her warm." "Boss, you need to come see this yourself." 20 minutes later, Dante's motorcade pulled up to a scene that would be seared into his memory forever. Police lights painted the snow red and blue. Paramedics worked frantically over 2 figures. One small, one larger. Sophia was conscious, crying, and reaching for him as he pushed through the crowd. He gathered her into his arms, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Proof of life, proof of a miracle. "Papa," she sobbed. "The angel kept me warm. Is the angel okay?" Dante looked over to where the paramedics were loading a stretcher into an ambulance. A young woman with dark hair and brown skin that had gone gray with hypothermia. She was barely breathing. Her coat, his daughter's beautiful cashmere coat, was still clutched in Sophia's small hands. "She gave me her coat, Papa. She said I had to stay warm. She said someone was coming." Marco appeared at his elbow. Elena Vasquez. 26. Works 3 jobs. Sister at the University of Chicago Medical with stage 3 lymphoma. They live in a basement apartment on the south side. He paused. "Boss, I followed the blood trail." She carried Sophia almost half a mile in -15 wind chill. No coat. Just carried her until she dropped. Dante watched the ambulance doors close. "Follow her," he said quietly. "She doesn't leave our sight. Whatever she needs, she gets. Whatever it costs." "And the Sterlings?" Dante's eyes went cold. "They'll keep. First, we pay our debts." The ambulance screamed into the night, and Dante Moretti, the monster of Chicago, felt something crack open in his chest that he'd thought had died with his wife 5 years ago. Elena woke to warmth. This was confusing because she distinctly remembered dying. She opened her eyes to a ceiling she didn't recognize. Ornate molding, a crystal chandelier, and walls painted the color of champagne. The bed beneath her was softer than anything she'd ever felt, and the sheets smelled like lavender and money. "You're awake." She turned her head, slowly because everything hurt, and found a man sitting in a chair beside her bed. He was dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than she made in a year, with dark hair silvering at the temples and eyes the color of a winter storm. His face was handsome in a brutal way, all sharp angles and hard edges. She knew that face. Everyone in Chicago knew that face. "You're Dante Moretti," she whispered. "And you're the woman who saved my daughter's life." He leaned forward, and Elena noticed the exhaustion carved into his features and the fear that hadn't quite faded from his eyes. "You gave her your only coat in a blizzard. You carried her until your body gave out. You wrapped yourself around her to keep her warm while you froze to death." Elena's memories were coming back in fragments. The alley. The little girl. The cold. The coat. "Sophia," she said. "Is she?" "She's fine. Minor frostbite on 2 fingers, but they saved them. She's been asking about her angel." Something flickered across his face. Wonder, maybe, or confusion. She's never called anyone that before. Elena tried to sit up and gasped as pain lanced through her hands and feet. She looked down at her body for the first time and felt the blood drain from her face. Her hands were wrapped in thick bandages. Her feet, elevated on pillows, were the same. The skin she could see between the gauze was mottled purple and black, dead tissue mixed with living. "The frostbite was severe," Dante said, his voice carefully neutral. "You lost 2 toes on your right foot. 3 fingers on your left hand are still uncertain. They're monitoring for infection. The surgeons say you'll never have full sensation in your extremities again." Elena stared at her bandaged hands. Hands that had scrubbed floors and washed dishes and held her sister during chemotherapy. Hands that would never work the same again. "I need to call my sister," she said, because if she thought about anything else, she would shatter. "Maya will be worried. I have to get back to work. I have bills, I can't. Your sister has been notified. She's being cared for at my personal medical facility, where she'll receive the best treatment available for her condition." Dante's gaze never wavered. "You've been unconscious for 3 days, Miss Vasquez. Your jobs have been handled. Your landlord has been informed you won't be returning to that basement apartment. You can't just—" Elena's voice cracked. "I don't need charity. I don't need. This isn't charity." Dante stood, and Elena suddenly understood why people called him the monster. Not because he was cruel, but because he was a force of nature. Immovable, inevitable, and absolute. "This is a debt. And I always pay my debts." He left her alone in the room that cost more than her life, and Elena finally let herself cry. 1 week later, Dante found Elena in the library. She'd been mobile for 3 days now, navigating the mansion on heavily bandaged feet, learning to grip things with hands that no longer fully obeyed her. The physical therapist he'd hired said she was the most determined patient he'd ever worked with. The psychologist said she was repressing enough trauma to fuel a small war. Dante found both assessments unsurprising. "You work 3 jobs," he said without preamble, sitting across from her with a file folder in his hands. "Hospital cafeteria, 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. Dry cleaning, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Office cleaning, 7 p.m. to midnight. That's 19 hours a day, 6 days a week." Elena's jaw tightened. "I do what I need to do." "Your sister's treatment costs approximately $15,000 a month after insurance. Your combined income barely covers $6,000. You've been drowning for a year, taking loans from increasingly dangerous people, selling everything you own. He opened the folder. You're currently $63,000 in debt, with interest rates that would be criminal if the people you borrowed from believed in laws. You had no right to. I had every right. Dante's voice was soft but unyielding. You saved my daughter. That means your problems are now my problems. That means the people you owe money to are now people who owe me explanations for why they thought they could threaten someone under my protection. Elena's eyes widened. What did you do? I cleared your debts. All of them. He held up a hand before she could protest. This is not charity, Miss Vasquez. This is an investment. I'm offering you a position as Sophia's personal assistant and companion. The salary is $200,000 per year, with full medical benefits that will cover your sister's treatment entirely. The number hung in the air between them, impossibly large. I can't accept that, Elena whispered. That's not a job offer, that's a lifeline, Dante finished. Yes, it is. Because I watched my daughter almost die in a blizzard, and the only reason she's alive is that a stranger decided her life was worth more than her own. He leaned forward, and for a moment, the monster of Chicago looked almost human. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have power that most people can't imagine. And I couldn't protect my own child. But you did. With nothing but a second-hand coat and your bare hands. Elena was silent for a long moment. Maya gets the best doctors. The best in the world. And Sophia, she's a good kid? Something softened in Dante's face. She's the only good thing I've ever created. Elena looked down at her damaged hands, at the life that had been taken from her and the life that was being offered in its place. She thought about her sister, about medical bills, about 19-hour days and a frozen basement, and about a future that had looked like nothing but more of the same. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. Dante nodded once, as if the outcome had never been in doubt. Welcome to the Moretti household, Miss Vasquez. I hope you survive it. The first month was an education in contrasts. Elena had expected cold efficiency, a household run by fear and populated by shadows. She had expected Dante Moretti to be the monster everyone said he was, cruel, calculating, and capable of violence without remorse. Instead, she found a man who read bedtime stories in silly voices. She discovered this by accident, passing Sophia's room one evening and hearing Dante narrate the adventures of a brave princess with such theatrical commitment that she stopped in the hallway, frozen with something she couldn't name. And then the dragon said in his most terrifying voice. Dante's pitch dropped to a ridiculous growl. Who dares enter my lair? And Princess Sophia said, I dare, Mr. Dragon. Sophia supplied gleefully. And I'm not afraid of you because my papa taught me that fear is just a dragon that lives in your tummy, and you have to feed it brave thoughts until it turns into a kitty. Elena pressed a hand over her mouth to keep from laughing. Or crying. She wasn't sure which. Exactly right, Tesoro. Dante's voice was soft now. The monster completely vanished. Now sleep. Your angel will be here in the morning. Elena hurried away before she could be caught eavesdropping, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Over the following weeks, she learned the rhythms of this strange household. She learned that Dante took his coffee black and his loyalty absolute. She learned that Sophia loved astronomy and hated broccoli and had nightmares about the cold that only subsided when Elena promised to never, ever leave her. She learned that the men who worked for Dante, dangerous men, killers, some of them, spoke about him with something that looked less like fear and more like devotion. He pulled my family out of hell, Marco told her once, when she asked why he stayed. My mother was dying, and no hospital would touch her because she didn't have papers. Dante paid for everything. Set her up in a house in Florida. Never asked for anything in return except my loyalty. He shrugged. Some debts you pay with your life. Some debts you pay gladly. Elena was beginning to understand. She watched Dante with Sophia. Patient, gentle, endlessly devoted, and she watched him in meetings with men who should have terrified her. Cold, precise, utterly merciless. He was two people, maybe more, and she was starting to wonder which one was real. Or maybe they both were. Maybe monsters could also be fathers. Maybe the man everyone feared could also be the man who sat with his daughter during thunderstorms, telling her stories until the lightning seemed less frightening. By the end of the second month, Elena had stopped calling him Mr. Moretti. By the end of the third, she had stopped being afraid. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday. Elena was returning from physical therapy. Her hands were improving, her feet still painful but functional, when she noticed the car. Black sedan, tinted windows, parked across the street from the medical center. It pulled away when she looked at it, but she'd grown up in rough neighborhoods. She knew when she was being watched. The second sign came 2 days later, a note left in her locker at the physical therapy center. Just 3 words, printed on expensive paper. Drop it now. Elena didn't know what she was supposed to be dropping. The third sign was the man who followed her through the grocery store, close enough that she could feel his breath on her neck when he leaned in and whispered, "Senator Sterling sends his regards. He hopes you'll remember that some stories are better left untold." Elena went straight to Dante. His reaction was immediate and terrifying. Every trace of the father, the gentle reader of bedtime stories, vanished. What remained was a pure predator, cold and focused and absolutely lethal. "Describe him," Dante commanded. "Every detail. Tall, blonde, ex-military build. Expensive suit, cheap shoes, they creaked when he walked. He had a scar on his right hand, between the thumb and forefinger. Looked like a knife wound." Marco, who had appeared as if summoned by Dante's fury, made notes on his phone. "Sterling," Dante said quietly. "He thinks he can threaten you because of what happened that night. He thinks you might have seen something or heard something that could connect him to Sophia's kidnapping." "I didn't see anything. I just found her in the alley. He doesn't know that. And even if he did, he wouldn't care. Men like Sterling don't leave loose ends." Dante turned to Marco. "Double Elena's security. No one gets within 100 feet of her that we don't know about. And find out everything there is to know about Senator Harold Sterling's recent activities. Everything." "Dante," Elena started. "This is my fault." His voice was rough with something that might have been guilt. "You saved my daughter, and now you're being hunted because of it. Because Sterling thinks he can get to me through you. I can take care of myself." "No." Dante stepped closer, and Elena saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Fear, but not for himself. "You saved Sophia with nothing but your own body. You nearly died for a child you didn't know. I will not let Harold Sterling take one more thing from you, Elena. Do you understand me? I will not allow it." The way he said her name, her first name, not Miss Vasquez, made something shift in the air between them. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Dante nodded once, sharp and decisive. "Good. Now stay close. This ends soon." The crisis forced them together. With security concerns heightened, Elena moved from the guest wing to rooms adjacent to Sophia's, and by extension, Dante's own quarters. She took meals with the family now, sat in on Sophia's lessons, and became woven into the fabric of their daily life in ways that felt both natural and terrifying. It was during one of those meals that Dante noticed. Sophia was struggling with her math homework, growing increasingly frustrated, And Elena simply handled it. She turned the equations into a game, made the numbers dance, and transformed frustration into laughter without ever making Sophia feel stupid or small. "Where did you learn to do that?" Dante asked later, after Sophia had been tucked into bed. They were in his study, sharing a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Elena's old monthly rent. The fire crackled, and for once the mansion didn't feel like a fortress. It felt almost like a home. "My mother," Elena said. "She was a teacher back in Mexico. Before she came here, before she had to clean houses instead of run classrooms." A small smile crossed her face. "She always said that every child could learn anything if you just found the right door into their mind." "She sounds remarkable." She was. Elena's smile faltered. "She died when I was 17. Cancer like Maya. I think about her every day. Whether she'd be proud of what I've become or disappointed that I couldn't do more." Dante was quiet for a long moment. "When my wife died," he said finally, "I tried to become someone she would have been ashamed of. I thought if I was cruel enough, cold enough, the pain would stop. It didn't. What stopped it? Sophia." His voice softened. "Sophia, and the understanding that love doesn't die when people do. It just changes, finds new shapes." Elena didn't know what to say to that. The vulnerability in his voice was unexpected, almost uncomfortable, like seeing a lion lie down to rest. "Elena." Dante turned to look at her, and his gaze was warm in a way that had nothing to do with the fire. "You're the first person in years who hasn't wanted anything from me. The first person who's treated Sophia like a child and not a chess piece. The first person who's—" He paused, searching for words. "Who's reminded me that not everything in this world is corrupted." "I'm not special," Elena said. "I just did what anyone would do." "No." Dante's voice was firm. "What you did was extraordinary. What you are is extraordinary. And I need you to know that, whatever happens with Sterling, whatever comes next, you are not alone anymore. You are not expendable. You are not a loose end to be tied up." He reached out and took her damaged hand, gently, carefully, as if she were something precious. "You are the best thing that has happened to this household since Sophia's mother died. And I will not let you freeze again. Not in the snow and not in life." Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but she didn't pull away. For the first time in years, she let herself be held. Senator Harold Sterling thought he was untouchable. He had served 3 terms in Congress, owned half the judges in Cook County, and had connections that reached into every corner of Chicago's power structure. He had orchestrated the kidnapping of a 4-year-old girl to send a message to her father about a business deal gone sour, and he fully expected to get away with it. He did not understand who he was dealing with. The first blow came at dawn on a Thursday. Federal agents raiding his campaign headquarters with warrants that named crimes Sterling thought were buried forever. Bank fraud, money laundering, connections to trafficking operations that would make even his most corrupt allies distance themselves. The second blow came at noon, a press conference where 3 of his former employees, carefully protected, carefully coached, provided testimony that would ensure he never held public office again. The third blow came at 6 p.m., when Dante Moretti walked into Senator Sterling's private office and closed the door behind him. What happened in that room was never fully disclosed. When Dante emerged 30 minutes later, Sterling was alive but broken, weeping, shaking, and signing documents that transferred control of his assets to trusts that would benefit victims of the crimes he'd committed. Marco was waiting in the hallway. "The fixers who threatened Elena?" Marco asked. "Dealt with." Dante straightened his cufflinks. "They won't be threatening anyone again." "And Sterling?" Dante smiled, and it was the coldest expression Marco had ever seen. Harold Sterling is going to spend the next 20 years in federal prison, where he will have plenty of time to contemplate the consequences of his choices. I've ensured he'll be in the general population. Word travels fast in prison about men who hurt children. The charges will stick. Every single one. Dante began walking toward the elevator. I've been building this case for 3 months, Marco. Since the night he took my daughter. Every connection, every corrupt deal, every body buried in his closet, I found them all. And I handed them to prosecutors who were very, very motivated to pursue them. Why now? Dante paused at the elevator doors. Because he threatened Elena. Because she almost died because of me, and then he tried to use her as leverage. His voice hardened. Some things cannot be forgiven. Some debts must be paid in full. The elevator doors opened, and Dante stepped inside. Tell Elena it's over, he said. Tell her she's safe. Spring came slowly to Chicago that year. Elena stood at the window of her room, not a guest room anymore, but her room, decorated with her things, filled with her life, and watched the ice begin to melt in the garden below. 6 months ago, she had been freezing to death in an alley. Now she was watching flowers push through the last of the snow, persistent and hopeful, refusing to stay buried. Elena! Sophia burst through the door, all energy and excitement. Dr. Keller called. He says Maya's numbers are the best they've been in a year. She might be in remission. The joy that flooded through Elena was almost painful in its intensity. She swept Sophia into her arms, spinning her around, laughing and crying at the same time. Is that true, Tesoro? Is that really true? I'm not lying. Sophia was giggling now. Papa said we should go visit her and bring cake and flowers and... Cake and flowers sound perfect. Elena set her down, wiping tears from her cheeks. Let me get changed and we'll go. Maya's hospital room was filled with sunlight when they arrived. She was sitting up in bed, looking healthier than Elena had seen her in months, and she burst into tears when she saw her sister. Elena. Maya reached for her. They told me what you did. The coat, the little girl, all of it. Why didn't you tell me? You had enough to worry about. Elena hugged her fiercely. I just needed you to focus on getting better. You almost died for a stranger. Maya's voice was thick. Who does that? Elena does, Sophia said solemnly from her position next to Dante. She's an angel. That's what angels do. Dante caught Elena's eye across the room and smiled. A real smile, warm and unguarded, the kind she'd only seen when he was with his daughter. Now he was looking at her that way, and Elena felt something bloom in her chest that she couldn't quite name. After the visit, they returned to the mansion to find Marco waiting with an unusual request. We found something in the alley, he said. When we went back to investigate Sterling's involvement, one of the men retrieved it. He held out a bundle of fabric, carefully wrapped. We thought you might want it. Elena unwrapped the bundle and felt her breath catch. Her coat. Her old coat, the one she'd wrapped around Sophia that night. It was ruined, stained and torn, damaged beyond repair, but she held it like it was made of gold. We want to frame it, Dante said quietly. If that's all right with you. A reminder of the night our family was born. Our family. The words settled over Elena like a warm blanket. I'd like that, she whispered. 3 months later, the coat hung in a glass case in the mansion's main hall, with a small plaque underneath, the coat that started everything, in honor of Elena Vasquez, who taught us that love is the warmest shelter of all. Maya recovered fully. The cancer retreated, beaten back by treatments that Elena's old salary could never have afforded. She moved into the mansion's East Wing, where she started an online degree program and fell in love with the chef who had been cooking her recovery meals. Sophia grew taller, brighter, and more confident. A child who had been touched by darkness but emerged knowing she was loved beyond measure. And Elena. Elena finally stopped running. She stopped waiting for the next disaster, the next bill, the next frozen morning when everything would fall apart. She let herself be loved by a man who had been a monster and became something else. She let herself be family to a little girl who still called her Angel every night before bed. On the anniversary of the night she almost died, Elena stood in the garden with Dante, watching Sophia chase fireflies in the summer dusk. "I was nobody," Elena said softly. "Nobody who mattered, nobody anyone would miss. And now you're everything," Dante finished. He took her hand, the scarred hand, the damaged hand, the hand that had saved his daughter, and brought it to his lips. "You were nobody, Elena. You just hadn't found your home yet." Elena leaned into him, watching their daughter play, and knew he was right. She had found her home, and it would never let her freeze again. The end. If Elena's sacrifice moved you, smash that like button and share this story of hope. Would you have given your only coat away? Tell us in the comments and subscribe for the next chapter. Click the bell to join the Moretti family and never miss a story of resilience and justice.